Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Andrea Weckerly, and welcome to the Ready Living podcast, where each episode is designed to educate, inspire, and empower you to create the life you want. My guest today is Kate Strong, who truly embodies the spirit of resilience and purpose-driven living. She's a 3-time world record-holding static cyclist from 2021 and an age group world champion in triathlon from 2014. She's a sought-after international keynote and TEDx speaker, an internationally recognized expert in change behavior, emergent strategy, and sustainability, a business owner and coach, the host of the podcast Strong Voice, and author of the brand new book Climate Cycle. She also holds a double master's in engineering. Last year, Kate embarked on an extraordinary adventure cycling over 3,000 miles around mainland Britain on a handmade bamboo bike. Along the way, she visited dozens of communities, projects, companies, and schools, all dedicated to combating the climate crisis. She chronicled her incredible journey in her new book. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to start out with your static cycling world record attempt. You'd initially planned to do it a bit earlier, right? But then COVID threw a wrench into those plans. Tell us about that.
Yeah, completely. So, like every best laid plan, I started training in 2020 with the goal to reattempt a 24-hour world record, static cycling record. I tried it a few years ago, but I failed. And that failure haunted me, not because I didn't get the record, but I knew I hadn't fully trained to my peak level. And knowing that I'd sort of gave my 60% didn't sit well with me. So I started to train again in 2020. Unbeknown to me, we were just about to face this enormous global lockdown and huge shift as well. I think it would be obvious to say most of us went through some type of reflection throughout that process, and we were impacted in different varying degrees, be it our health or our mental health, or just understanding that potentially our life isn't going in the direction we wanted. And for me, luckily, my world record was static cycling, so the lockdown didn't impact my training per se, but I had to let go of my desire to control everything. I couldn't do the record on the dates that I planned. I had to embrace a little bit of variability. I had to let go and be comfortable or less uncomfortable with the unknown as well. So the dates moved actually 3 times. And it was very challenging to have a date or to be training for something without an end goal. So it took about 6 months past the original date that I wanted to complete it to be able to attempt the record. And I learned a lot about myself, about, as I said, the desire to know everything and to learn to live in the grey. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's not fearful. It's not a weakness. You know, my name is Kate Strong. So I was taught that not knowing is not something that should be ever used in my title. So yeah, it was a very humbling experience, and to rely on people to actually support me through that as well. So yeah, there was a lot of lessons actually in the pause as much as the peak. So yeah, quite an experience for me.
During the introduction, when I talked about a 3-time world record holder, it was for the 1 hour, I believe, and the 12 hour and the 24. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So it was in the pause. I realized if I'm going to sit on a bike for 24 hours, why not go hard for the first hour, a little bit less hard for the 12 hours, and then in theory cruise it out till the 24 hours is over. It was not at all like that. But yeah, so it enabled me to expand my possibility and go, well, what if I could do that? What if I attempted 3 in 1? So thankfully, I did have that failure, if you want, or the waiting time, because it enabled me to grow and imagine bigger as well.
And I've heard you say that the 24-hour world record attempt wasn't just physically challenging, of course, but mentally as well. And in your book, you describe how your crew would ask whether you could cycle 10 more minutes, and you adamantly responded that you absolutely couldn't. And then they got you to agree to go on for 5 more minutes. So what I want to know is what went through your mind during those 5 minutes and then the next 5 minutes?
Some of it was actually down to the minute as well. Like we had to but originally it was going to be every hour we'd check in. But yeah, it was my breath. I gave my word for a minute. As soon as I gave my word or my commitment or my promise, I honoured that, and it was in for 3, out for 3, in for 2, out for 2, or counting my rotations. Can I feel me pulling up on the leg, down on the leg, sideways? It was any form of distraction to pass the time without counting the seconds. Because honestly, a second felt like a year, especially in the last few hours, because I had chafed to the point where I had split some of my skin. I was sitting on open wounds. Physically, I was deteriorating and breaking down. My left knee was twice the size of the right. So yeah, it was any form of technique. But it's amazing when the training before the cycling and off the bike was what really got me through those 5-minute intervals. Is if we say we're going to do something, just do it. And that sort of level of integrity and commitment and promise that I'm not my gold medals, I'm not my world records, because those can be lost in a heartbeat. But I am a person who does call you back at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday because I gave you my promise. So I became that woman who does what she promises. And I promised to cycle for 5 more minutes, and that's what I did.
Well, I think we all need more of that. The world needs more of that. When you say you're going to do something, you do it, unless there's extraordinary reasons why you can't. And the world record attempt wasn't just about the actual achievement, but you also said somewhere out there in an interview or in your writing that it was a means to talk about the importance of fair gender representation in sport, and that you hoped the attempt would inspire other people to dream big and embrace bold goals.
Yeah. Well, the original record, there was a male world record for 24 hours on a static bike, but no female equivalent. And it's very important to talk about the gender discrepancy, especially in sport. And I do say this knowing I'm a cisgender, white female. So there are other intersections going on at play, but I was identifying with the discrepancies with the female aspect of the sport. And so instead of pointing the finger at the men competing, I decided to just step up and be another woman competing and to do a record that no female had attempted. So this was a world's first, which gives the media a good news story about a woman in sport, which equalizes the playing field around the world records and fair distribution between the genders a little bit more. So I suppose I'm always looking for ways that my actions positively impact a sort of cause that I care about. I don't want to point and call and shame and name companies or organizations or groups that aren't doing well. I try and give them enough content in the good stuff. They can't avoid it anymore. They have to talk about it. So that was my first entry level into like positive advocacy or being a rebel. And how to use it that makes me feel comfortable, because I'm not an anarchist at heart. I don't want to burn bridges down and be that Coke can or soup thrower. There are places for that, but it's not me. This definitely fits in with me to disrupt the status quo, but also do it in a comfortable way for my own sort of psychology.
I think that's really important. We each have areas in which we can contribute positively. And like you said, in social movements or anything that needs to be improved upon, there's different ways of achieving that, but being true to yourself and keeping the goal in mind is so important. You live streamed the world record attempt, and I remember watching several hours and being in awe of seeing you out there and going and going and going. And I'd see some of the physical and the emotional challenges you were going through, and I was in complete awe of what I was seeing. What made you decide to live stream your world record attempt?
To me, it was a no-brainer. I wanted people to be part of the journey, and the journey is never pretty. What we imagine climbing a mountain at the top of us, looking picture perfect, so we can be on the front cover of Vogue or things like that. It's not the case. It's gnarly. It's ugly. There's tears. There's sweat. There's snot running down my face. There's a lot of tears, a lot more tears. Obviously for time reasons, I didn't stop to go to the bathroom. So if I was sitting on a towel, it meant that I was going to the bathroom, and I wanted people to see that the embarrassment I had to put myself through and overcome and get over myself to achieve this goal. to be extraordinary, to be outside our comfort zone, it is very uncomfortable and awkward. And we have to express and show layers of vulnerability that aren't typical. I had to rely on 20 people to feed me, to enforce me to take breaks or not, and to trust these people that I'd barely met myself, because some of them were strangers who just offered their time, which was unbelievably generous. So I wanted to live stream it to say, this is the true path to success. It is ugly, it is gnarly, it is sometimes cringeworthy, but don't be afraid of it. It's not about being perfect, it's about getting the job done, because it's after the fact, it's who we've become through that we elevate and can actually achieve great things. So yeah, I had to live stream it to show the truth, because words will never do it. So I'm sitting here, I've done my hair, I've got a little bit of lipstick on for you. Like, this isn't the true path to success. It was that sort of, smelly, sweaty woman a few years ago that was the successful one.
These days, we talk so much about authenticity. What I saw there and the things you're sharing now are truly authentic. You are both the world champion and somebody who's achieved a tremendous success. And then also, you're this person who has put in the time to make that happen and knows what it requires, and is very honest about that process. But this wasn't your first foray into pushing your athletic boundaries, though, because before the world record attempt, you competed in an Ironman triathlon. And here, too, it wasn't just about the physical aspect of the race, but about what it symbolized for you. You leaned into the physical activity and created a goal that was yours and yours alone in order to heal and grow and rebuild your life after your long term relationship ended.
Yeah, exactly right. Being selfish is the most selfless thing we can do. And for me, my Ironman triathlon journey was that. I had to have an excuse to put me on my list of things to do and to look after, because for too many years I wasn't even featured. The laundry was ahead of my own personal, mental, and physical well-being. So committing to enter a sporting race that was pretty scary, an Ironman triathlon is 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, finishing with a marathon, 26.2-mile run. So to be able to compete in that, I had to do my training, which meant I had to say no to supporting my friends, to picking up clothes, to saying yes to more work, or not sleeping effectively. I had to start saying yes to my health in order to even get to the start line. And so, yeah, it was a means of me building up my own personal confidence and the courage to actually believe I could achieve it. And I had the right to dream, and I had the right to dream big as well. So it was a huge learning journey for me in my healing state, as you said, from quite a toxic relationship where I'd been told I was broken, and not seeing that as part of my own beautiful quirks rather than something I had to be ashamed to hide.
In your book, you talk about the Ironman being an opportunity to show yourself what you could do, and that you weren't there to beat anybody. You just wanted to do your best, and that you would have been happy with whatever the result was, knowing that you'd chosen the hard path of training and discipline and routine. And then after the Ironman, you intentionally moved away from competitive events, which was probably surprising to a lot of people because you actually didn't like competing against others. And in my view, it takes great personal awareness, insight, and courage to look around and decide to go against the predominant social messages we're given and decide there is a better life to be lived out there.
Yeah, and I think on a similar plane, but it's just sort of the same founding message. We evolve. I'm looking at my face. There's quite a few. I was watching Cameron Diaz talk about this recently. That she's grateful that she doesn't look like she did when she was 20, because she's now a 40-plus-year-old woman with much more decades of experience, and that's obviously going to show in her face the amount of times that she smiled and laughed at another joke, at the times that she was worried about her children or her family. She's going to frown. These marks on our face exhibit that we've lived life. So with my sport, of course, I'm going to evolve, and I didn't need that competition. It served its purpose, yet I'd grown through it. And I wanted to, like a river, flow with where my life took me. And if there is no passion, or the passion was dying and I felt like I was forcing the journey, it's time to go with the flow and just follow where it took me. And as you said earlier, it took me to the world records and beyond. So it's different. It's not the same. But yeah, it was flowing much more away from the competition with others.
But this ability of yours to look at the narrative that's out there and then to discern that it's not right for you. This was something that seems to have been ingrained in you from early on, because you talk about that you knew a long time ago that the life that was laid out for you and that you were expected to follow wasn't right for you, and that you ended up reading biographies of people who stepped away from their circumstances to create the life that they wanted to live, and that through their example they served as a type of mentor and guides, to show you that this type of thinking wasn't crazy after all, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we look far too closely to home for our tribe, the people around us, the people we can quite literally touch. And it's beautiful if they exist, but if not, we can create them, we can imagine them, we can manifest them, we can read about them, we can create and connect with whomever we want, really, through podcasts such as your own, or any medium, really. So I was looking for things that lit me up, and people who put a wow in my eyes, rather than the crossed arms of confusion, not really getting it. So my tribe is global. My tribe are strivers, and typically they don't sit still very much. So of course they're not going to all be in the same cafe at the same time. So of course I'm going to have to follow them vicariously through their own adventures and journeys.
No, I love it. And you share this beautifully inspiring story of 7-year-old Kate that really explores your desire to see and embrace the world. And you talk about having created this overnight runaway bag. Again, you were 7 years old, this overnight runaway bag where you had a t-shirt, a pair of pants, socks, pen, and paper. I love that, to take notes, because you're going to be seeing wonderful things out there. So you have to write it all down. That's I thought that was so adorable. So you could take notes about the exciting things you would see. Money, of course, for the bus, practically oriented, and here's the best part, a banana. And it was the banana that ended up thwarting your plans. Tell us about that.
Well, I don't actually like bananas. I ate my first banana in 2019, so it's not a new thing for me, and I don't particularly enjoy the flavour. But I adore my younger brother, so the banana was to like entice him to come with me, because I didn't want to have an adventure without him. I didn't want him to miss out. So the banana was a sort of way to lure and trap my 5-year-old brother to join me, but he never did. A banana wasn't big enough for him to leave the comfort of his home, so I never left the house. But I also never ate the banana, which meant that's how my mother found the bag and discreetly sat me down and asked me what was the problem. So it's all good.
But then you also talk about how it took another 10 years. So when you were 17, you finally got your parents' permission to travel on your own around Europe. What was that like when you finally got the green light for that and you get to sit there and embrace what is out there, that whole world that you've seen from your front door, but never got to experience in person? What was that like then when you finally got to embark on your own for the very first time?
It'd be like biting into a freshly grown strawberry for the first time in your life. Like the flavor, the color, the texture, everything just exploded in my life. But I also worked out how to get what I wanted, because my father loves France. And the reason I was permitted to travel was because most of my time would have been spent traveling through his country, his passion. So maybe if I'd chosen a different country, I may not have been allowed to do that. But yeah, I just loved the freedom, the rawness of life. I think anyone who travels alone, especially, we don't know who we're going to meet. We have to learn very quickly what to trust and what not to trust. What happens if a bus is late or a train is late, especially this is before mobile phones, that's showing my age. I had to learn very quickly to be quite resilient and self-sufficient, but also not care. Like, it didn't matter if I missed a train, because there would be another one predictably. So it was a layer of like caring, but also not caring at the same time. So I felt very, very alive, and if anything, it just whet my appetite for yet more. And I'm still nomadic, and I'm 45, so I obviously haven't lost the bug yet.
Right after your studies, though, that's when you embarked on this completely crazy world trip, traveling to different countries and meeting different people. And in your book, you share these beautiful stories, some of them very hair raising. I don't want to take anything away, but I encourage everybody to buy Kate's book. It really is brilliant. And you're going to come across some stories that will just make you hold your breath, that they were close calls but they ended up being okay. But one of the really lovely stories you shared was your story of Maria, whom you met in Todos Santos, Guatemala. Can you tell us a little bit about her and what impact meeting her had on you and vice versa?
Yeah, so I was just coming off the back of an all day hike in Todos Santos, a very small village in the foothills of the Guatemalan mountains. And I walked past this beautiful wooden house, and there was a lady, Maria, as I later found out, in her garden. I think she was grinding corn, but there was some type of curiosity of pragmatical work she was doing that caught my eye. And her dog came over to sort of be patted, and we started to talk. And she fortunately spoke Spanish. The region typically speaks Mam, which is a native language. And it was just in that moment I thought, I'm not going to be afraid of no. I'm not going to be afraid of rejection. So I loved hearing about her journey and what she was just, well, her life basically. And so I just asked her, do you have space in your house? And could I come and live with you for a little bit? A random question, but without a beat, she just said yes. So we agreed $5 a day. It turns out she was married and they had 4 children, two boys, 2 girls. Two of them were in university, so it worked well that I could live in their room. And for every day I just pay $5, and I actually stayed with her and her family for a month. And through that process, it was heartening to see a family working. And as you said, we found ways for me to learn from her, ways that she wove her own clothes. As I said, she ground her own corn. She was teaching her children how to read to prepare them to go to university, the younger ones. And so I became a bit entrepreneurial, I guess, and thought, well, if I'm curious, who else in the area is but doesn't know about what you're doing? So I suggested she put a little advert in the local bookshop and the bus stop around teaching people how to make a loom and weave in the traditional way. And before long, there was a few other tourists, such as myself, who were staying in the village, who were tired of hiking hills and reading books and wanted to do something with their hands. So I'd come back home and there'd be 3 or 4 Americans or other foreigners learning how to weave, and she was being paid to do that. And then her young children loved me taking them to the bookshop once a week, and I'd buy them a book and then we'd switch it out the following week for a discount. But that's unsustainable. So again, I thought, well, if I lent them $1, which they paid me back, I used to enjoy when I came back from my hikes, they'd give me a frozen banana. Who else would enjoy that? So bought 4 or 5 bananas, froze them, and then used to give them to tourists just like me who walked past their house at the end of the street. And each week they'd sell upwards of 30 to 40 bananas. So they weren't just buying enough for them to buy books, they were actually supporting their parents by the end of my stay at the month as well. And it was beautiful to know that, the cliche story about you teach a man how to fish, you feed the family for a day, but if you teach a woman how to make a net, they can actually feed their family for the rest of their life. And it was just wonderful to see that parable coming to life with this family, and knowing I didn't just leave with a new belt that I wove and a few bananas that I learned how to enjoy, but I was also leaving them with a bit of a legacy as well. So yeah, it was just a beautiful, like, symbiotic relationship that warmed my heart.
Yeah, that's really, really beautiful. I want to talk about your actual climate cycle trip last year now, which obviously you wrote this whole book about that I already mentioned. People should definitely go out and buy. You will enjoy it. You'll love it. And in the book, you describe the enormous physical preparation you underwent to ensure you were as ready as possible for the 3,000 plus miles across the coastline of England, Scotland, and Wales. And at some point in the book, you also mention the Chinese proverb, keep the goal in stone and the journey in sand, and how that kept you flexible, right? And in other words, the goal of the climate cycle was to connect and collaborate with communities doing climate change work, and that the journey was to cycle all these miles, but that in fact these miles could be accomplished in any way, whether it was walking, cycling, or even driving, and to not get caught up in the details, but to keep the big picture in mind.
Yeah. I think far too many of us, we set a goal and then the goal becomes this almost pointy point of being perfect. And we're so afraid of getting it wrong, we actually lose sight of why we set the goal in the first instance. And I was guilty of that. I kept thinking that my goal was the 3,000 miles on a bamboo bike to show that we could be sustainable and travel around Britain on a bike. And we didn't need to be so dependent on fossil guzzling vehicles. But then I got really tired and a little bit injured, and I was behind my schedule, and I was getting really stressed, and I wasn't enjoying the journey, and I was supposed to visit a school, and I was thinking about cancelling because I had to cycle all day to get to the next venue to be probably stressed again. And I just paused and went, am I going to really miss a school and connect with 50 children and hear about what they're doing in their environment just to cycle? What if I caught a train? What's more important, being perfect to the plan or actually connecting with this school? Because predictably, I'd never see the school again. It was in Scotland. And I chose the latter. I chose to connect with the school. And I needed to get over myself, the fear of being judged. Like, I'm a world record cyclist. I should be able to cycle 3,000 miles. All those should words that weigh us down, and cycle. And that's when I realized that the goal was never the cycle. The goal was the people and the stories and the joy that I would feel visiting my countries that I've called home all this time. So it took an almost failure that I almost gave it all up just for that moment to realize that I had it wrong all along. Every single project was absolutely heartening, and it warmed my heart to realize these people exist. These people care about something big enough that they've committed a bit of their life to improving this, to supporting communities, to doing something that's giving back on a deeper level. But the ones that really stood out to me were the grassroots, really simple ones. There was a woman in West Wales in Porthmadog that grows herbs and vegetables outside a supermarket. So people don't need to buy their plastic wrapped basil and rosemary and thyme. They can just pick them from the garden. And children can understand what season is. So when the apples are in the forest, in the trees outside, they can just pick an apple. We don't need to buy them in a cost of living crisis. We don't need to buy them that's wrapped in plastic as well. So we can just help ourselves to the apples we need at the time we need them. And it was just that simple mindset of connecting to where these fruits and vegetables are grown, but we don't need to pay. And then again, the community started to come together from this, because what we build, people do arrive. I know this sounds very Noah's Ark, but people will come if we build it. So retired community members would come along and they'd start weeding and planting some more fruits and vegetables. And it started to be twice weekly coffee for retired couples and retired community members. So then not only was it an environmental impact, it was a social cause and a glue together. And some of these parents could leave their children there so they could go and shop whilst knowing their children were being babysat because they didn't have access to those resources. So it was just going backwards a bit in time and thinking about a community and all of us playing our roles, rather than you're the mother or you're the father, you do all of that with the children, I'm retired, I read my books and do this. Why not work together and collaboratively? So that one project sticks out to me because it was just so, it interwove every layer of society without it being a label. It was just, we bring people together, and whatever you want to do, you can do. It's all good.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So obviously you're talking about the importance of community here, and I want to say the actual trip was also a community endeavor because it had a virtual option and a WhatsApp group to be able to track where you were and what you were up to. In your book, you talk about how it was the parts where you were physically accompanied for short distances by others. I think it was around one third of the time that you enjoyed the most because you weren't doing it on your own. In other words, the fellowship and community provided you immeasurable support.
I'd offered my route publicly, so anyone could join me for an hour. I said an hour a day or a week, of which most people did take me up on every one of those things. How many of us travel in our life alone? It's about the people we meet. We strive to meet the one. We strive to, meet our partner, our friends, our connections, our relationships. We join clubs. We join hobbies with people. So my cycle wasn't about me doing this alone and sitting in my little pedestal of one on my bike by myself. It was about sharing the moment, seeing a fox run across the street and laughing about it, or being in awe about this majestic animal that lives both in nature and the urban environment with someone else. It was about those experiences to share and to story tell together. So I was very, grateful when people joined me or dropped me a private message to wish me well and check in on me, because it meant that we're part of each other, and somehow they were thinking of me and I was thinking of them, and that was sort of the bigger picture. We're on this, not to get too philosophical, but we're on this planet to connect, aren't we? We're on this planet to see each other, and isn't that a beautiful thing, to be noticed and loved and cared for, and to be able to reciprocate? So those messages, and the people who took time out of their life, their routine, to commit to join with me and elevate my journey and make it a little bit easier. Gosh, that was magical for me. And yeah, it broke a lot of my fear of others, fear of being laughed at, not being good enough, not being lovable, the typical fears I think many people who have had life happen in their lives struggle with. People didn't mind if I hadn't washed my t-shirt in 4 days, or my body wasn't a triathlete's body anymore, or no one saw that. They saw the beauty of the moment, and it really sort of peeled back my fears a little bit more. And yeah, those were the moments that really made it for me.
These were huge gifts that the people who accompanied you gave you. But I want to say from the other side of it, those of us who weren't there with you physically, there's something to be said for being able to see somebody doing what we can't at that time for whatever reason, and have them take us with them. So this wasn't just you doing this for you, Kate. This was really you doing it for all the people who wanted to be there or would love to do something like this, but for whatever reason couldn't. And there's tremendous value in that as well. So that is also a gift that you're giving to others.
I think it comes back to what we were saying earlier in being selfish, as long as it's done with pure of heart. Like there's always two sides to the same, like this, the coin is both sides at the same time. There's selfish with that scarcity mindset of mine and I'm going to take it, and the fear of if I don't have it, you won't, you will have it instead. But then there's the other giving selfish, that if I am centered and balanced, I can give more, I can be more, I can serve more. And so I'm talking about the pure of heart selfish. So I was doing it for me, but by default, because it was done with the genuineness of, I know if I'm in a good place, I can help more people and I can write more messages, because I know if I'm in a dark place, I shut down and I don't respond as readily. So it's sort of a self-perpetuating spiral of upwards. So yeah, I was being selfish and it served you. So there we are. Happy days.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And before we move on, I want to remind our listeners out there that if you're enjoying today's Ready Living podcast episode, go ahead and send an email with the subject line podcast to team@readywhenstuffhappens.com, and I'll make sure you're notified as soon as the next episode drops. Kate, you also share a fabulous quote: change is inevitable. We can wait and react to it, or step up and create a new path and a new world. I love it.
We can't stop the tides changing. We can't stop the moon rising and the sun setting. We can't change things outside of our control. One person can't change the world, but collectively we can. We just need to open up social media or a newspaper today to be triggered by 101 different crises, causes, wars, uh, catastrophes that are on the cusp of happening, to feel overwhelmed. And I sometimes feel it like, which one do I pick? Can I help all of them, or should I just give up now? And the answer is neither. It's not the binary of being responsible and burning ourselves out to the point of fear, but neither sitting in inertia. It's about knowing we have impact in our daily routine, but some days my 100% is taking on the world. Uh, and other days it is just getting out of bed and just being okay with that. So surrendering to the path and just seeing what comes up and dealing with it.
I think it was earlier this year that you recorded a bunch of interviews for your 45 Strong series, where you interviewed a bunch of different women asking them what being strong means to them. By the way, for those folks who are curious about this, I encourage you to go watch the interviews on Kate's YouTube channel at Kate Strong TV. What I want to do is hear from you how you define strength.
Gosh, what does being strong mean to me? Being strong is being graceful in failing. Being strong is being vulnerable and actually expressing where we're failing. It just comes down to being okay with failure. I remember seeing, what was it? It was Pete Sampras, the famous tennis player. He said that he fails 48% of his points, which means he wins one, loses one, but he wins the ones that can matter. So if number one tennis player in the world fails on average 50% of his shots, why am I so afraid of failure? So I think being strong is not being afraid to miss and still taking the shot.
The winning is in the trying. The winning is in the I'm going to do it again and again and again until I get where I want to go, or until I decide I have a different goal.
And remember, in triathlon, my goal was to be Ironman world champion. I never achieved that. I was long distance world champion. So I found my level, which I think is a huge success, but I would never have got there had I not aspired to a peak that was beyond my capability. That's not failure. Not one person ever has interviewed me saying, "Are you sad you lost? Are you sad you're only 10 in the world in your age group?" And I'm like, not really. Funny, but yeah.
Yeah, no, not really. Not really. I'm very proud. Exactly. You just celebrated 1 year of being a nomad. What does being a nomad look like on a daily basis?
Well, I don't have a house and I don't have a car. I do have a storage unit where I keep, I can't get rid of my books, and I have some clothes. So I have a unit, I rotate my clothes. A daily basis, I house sit for people. So I'm currently in the beautiful city called Bath, which has got the Roman baths in England. I'm looking after a dog and two cats. 2 weeks later, I will, by public transport, get to the south coast of England and house sit someone else's dog. So it's very live, and it's like living on holiday every single day, if I have to be honest, and a big adventure. And it comes with its own challenges, because I need to find out where I can find food, a different routine, how I can set up consistent Wi-Fi and do my work. The reason I keep choosing being a nomad, and I suppose my daily routine, is gratitude. I don't take things for granted where most people do. I don't know where I'm going to live, let alone my food, my job, my career, other things that people may prioritize as their points of concern. I'm grateful I have a roof over my head. And yeah, so it gives me a layer of gratitude and a sense of aliveness. And again, to not diminish, I do know I live in a First Nation. I live in the global north. I'm a woman of privilege by accident, not by design. So I have security where the vast majority of people, even my own country, who haven't got permanent accommodation don't have. So it's brought a bit of empathy into my life, where before I might have been slightly judgmental. I did not know I was. It was just through unconscious biases. But now I have another layer of understanding the barriers for some people who are living with poverty, who may not recycle their greens, and who may do things that I would prior have judged them for. But I better understand it's not as simple anymore. It's not that black and white. So it's given me space to be in the grey. And hopefully, as I said, that gratitude and empathy are two great skills that I'm developing and nurturing thanks to being a nomad and not having things taken for granted in my life.
So what's next for you?
What's next? Well, I am toying with coming to the US of A and doing a little adventure in the States on the East Coast. So
come to DC.
Yes.
Come to DC, Washington, DC.
Yes, I will. I've got one of my best friends. He lives in New York. Okay. So we're planning to cycle the Hudson River together for a week, exploring. He's a bit younger than me, so he's exploring his purpose. And I said, well, the best thing to do is follow a river, because that has purpose, but it meanders. So we're going to cycle from the source to the sea of the Hudson River, finishing in New York. But I'll loiter for a few months. So I'll definitely pop up to DC and see you. But prior to that, I have another world record to attempt.
All right, folks, you're hearing it here. Kate, tell us.
The evolution continues, because my mission with sport is, as I said, to connect and collaborate. I'm removing myself from the limelight, if you want. So earlier, just last month, I supported one of my friends who ran from the north to the south of Ireland in the fastest time, and I cycled behind her as support. So she had a world record for that. So she ran it in 3.5 days, which was incredible. But to support her world record goal was just inspirational. But I thought, how could I do this to change the behavior of the masses and realize that their one action counts? So the world record is actually going to take place on Friday the 14th of March, which is International Day of Action for Rivers. And I'm inviting as many school children in schools and companies as possible to clean up a river in South Wales. And that will be the world record, the most amount of people to clean up a river in one day. And again, that's to open up the mindset to children from the valleys of Wales, which is not known for its resources, for its growth mindset. It's known for being quite poverty-stricken areas of Wales. And to say, yes, that one piece of plastic or rubbish you collected didn't change the world, but the thousands of you that did that one piece did, and that deserves a world record. I'm hoping to introduce that collective collaboration and action to many more. I've teamed up with a freshwater expert from Cardiff University called Dr. Nomer Masood. Until quite recently, he was a refugee as well from Pakistan. So we're going to be talking about the global access to water. And we've got different legacy projects for schools, companies, the government, corporations, and individuals to get involved. So I'll also be helping children write and publish books, letters to the river, talking about how they can reimagine the future. Because there's a lot of doom and gloom out there. But what if we could go forward in time and imagine something positive? So I'm going to be workshopping that Imaginarium using Rob Hopkins' model to be able to help the children imagine a future where they're walking into something brighter than the darkness that we're portraying, and empowering them to know that they can make a difference too. So I get tingles thinking about it.
Tell people how they can follow this project or this world record when it happens, and how they can follow you in the meantime as well.
The easiest place is to go on my website, katestrong.global, and that has the links to everything. I'm quite active on Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as you said, YouTube. I'm toying with launching a TikTok channel as well, a more talking heads thing, but watch this space. And for the project about the world record, it's called Taff Tidy, because the river's called River Taff, Taff Tidy, and that's a link on my website.
Kate, thank you so very much for having taken the time today.